Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name's Dychronic, you're here on this Destiny 2 video, and today I wanted to take a look at a very interesting, silly, and fun build that uses Jotun, Sunspots, and two-shot 120 hand cannons fairly consistently and works well in the meta. I wouldn't say it's the best build or a really good build, but it is a lot of fun and works well. And of course, big thank you to my buddy Zoomzy for coming up with this build, and of course the PvP gameplay you can see on screen, link to his Twitch in the description down below. And if you haven't heard already, I have a giveaway going on right now of an Astro A10 headset and a Blue Yeti microphone. Find a link in the description down below, and there's only a few more days to enter. Moving on to the main section of the video, in a nutshell, what this build is focused around is first of all getting your Sunspots, which is Code of the Siegebreaker, either by getting an ability kill or getting a kill with Jotun. It should not work with Jotun, but it does work with Jotun, and whenever you walk into the Sunspot, you get ability regeneration and a 20% damage bonus, which you can increase from 5 seconds to 10 seconds if you have Phoenix Cradle, as well as allow your teammates to get it as well. And then you guessed it, with a 20% damage bonus, you can two-shot headshot anyone in the game with a 120 hand cannon. Moving on to the specs of this build, first of all, for the class and subclass, obviously it is a Titan Code of the Siegebreaker, which is very important because that's where the Sunspots are. I personally like using the Thermite Grenade because it works well with the 120 hand cannons, doing more than 110 damage with its hit, and it also really helps with shotgun rushers as it comes out immediately and right in front of you, on top of being very useful for obviously zoning doorways. When it comes to your melee, which is a very standard melee punch that creates an AoE explosion that also creates dot over time, you can accidentally get kills on enemies that have less than a third of their health, or of course get that dot, reducing the recovery. And if you end up getting a kill with your melee, you create a Sunspot, so it's very important any ability kill gives you Sunspots. When it comes to your super, I would actually say your super is pretty good in the current meta because it works very well against meta supers right now, like Golden Gun, Dawnblade, Behemoth, all of these supers. It works pretty well and has a pretty generous hitbox on the hammers. And on top of that, if you activate the super on the ground, you create a Sunspot immediately, allowing that super to last a lot longer. And anytime you kill an enemy or you throw a hammer, you also create more Sunspots, allowing you to, again, last longer. If you end up activating the hammers in the air, honestly, just throw a hammer at your feet, it will be worth it. Up next, let's talk about the weapons. First of all, for your Kinetic Weapon, I would highly recommend a 120 hand cannon. Any of the 120s will do, as long as they are legendary. Alternatively, you could use a 340 pulse rifle, as it will make the 2 bursts a lot more consistent, a lot easier. And of course, for your energy weapon, that obviously has to be Jotun, meaning that kinetic and heavy also have to be legendary weapons. Now, you don't actually have to use the Jotun, but it is a lot more dependable, consistent source of being able to get those Sunspots, whereas depending on your melee and your grenade is not very dependable. And then your heavy can be whatever you want. Up next, let's talk about the armor. First up, the exotic choice, I went with Phoenix Cradle, which allows your Sun Warrior Sunspot effect to last twice as long, from 5 seconds to 10 seconds, and your teammates can walk through it for that bonus as well, which if your teammates are using 120 hand cannons, they are going to follow you and love you. For the mod choices, first up, hand cannon dexterity is going to be very useful in a lot of different things and works well when switching between the Jotun and your hand cannon. Especially considering how often you will be missing your Jotun shot, it's important to be able to switch quickly if you don't have quick draw on your hand cannon. For the other mod on your arm, either fusion rifle loader or hand cannon loader, depending if you have a large magazine or overflow on your hand cannon. For the other armor pieces, obviously fusion rifle scavenger is going to be very important for the build, and of course hand cannon targeting and unflinching is also very useful for 120s across the board. Beyond that, a basic charge of light build with high energy fire and taking charge. You can also have stuff like stacks on stacks and precision charge, which will really just help on the neutral game, or as an alternative to your Sunspot damage, especially considering you're not going to be able to get that Stasis damage bonus from the crystals. And finally, when it comes to your stats, pretty standard in PvP, 9 recovery, 5 resilience, and for the build, 5 intellect works pretty well. The rest is up to you. Moving on, let's talk about this build in gameplay, because how you use it is going to be just as important as how you build it. First of all, you have to understand the Jotun counts as ability kills across the board, so that will trigger the Sunspots, and it will also trigger the healing that you get from ability kills, which is around maybe a fourth to a third of your health. And in most gunfights, you will want to lead with the Jotun, because if you can get the kill with the Jotun, you can get that healing, and then of course you can get that extra damage for your 120s. If you end up missing a shot with the Jotun, most of the time you're going to want to quick swap to your 120 and fight with that. And when it comes to the enemies and the counterplay, you generally want enemies that are not moving around a lot, they're not in cover, and definitely not when they're jumping. And if you end up fighting a jumping enemy, you're going to want to shoot your Jotun on their descent, as it's a lot more consistent and the shot will travel down with them towards the ground. And obviously if you see an enemy with Jotun, jump. Another counter to this build is going to be shotgun rushers, which again you counter with the thermite grenade followed up with a shot from the 120, which should kill them 1-1. And that is going to be pretty much the end of the build. Obviously, I'm not going into full detail of the optimization like I usually do. I'm not making the documents that I usually do because this is mostly a fun build, a silly build, and it happens to be releasing on April 1st. And obviously, I would not recommend it for the high level play, but if you're just playing 6v6 control, you're going to have a lot of fun. And of course, as always, want to give a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, I want to give a big thank you to Medibudu, Mom Dad, Charles Williams, Joe Smith, Monday, Natalie Halpins, Dubaknuis, Justin Rare, Raymond Chillman, Una Panther, Cole Sherman, Casey Reagan, a little spot in the middle there, but thank you for your support. My name's been Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.